At 63, Michael Jordan names the 5 players he actually feared. He never said sorry. He never said he was wrong. And in 15 years of professional basketball, Michael Jordan almost never let you see what was happening underneath. 6 championships, 10 scoring titles, 5 MVP awards. A legacy so total, so complete, that the argument about who's the greatest in basketball history usually starts and ends with his name. And yet, across his career, across his own interviews, across the rare moments when Michael Jordan cracked the door open, there were 5 players. 5 players who drove something in him that went deeper than motivation. That made him work in ways even the greatest players in the world never had to work. Today, we're going inside those 5 names. Every one of them documented, every one of them real. Not what we imagined Jordan was feeling, what he actually said. To understand why Michael Jordan's fear matters, you first have to understand what Michael Jordan was. He wasn't just a great basketball player. He was a psychological weapon. Jordan beat you before the ball was ever inbounded. He would find what made you uncomfortable, your turnovers, your missed shots, your weaknesses, and he would file it away. Then he'd use it. Scottie Pippen once said that watching Jordan dismantle someone mentally was more impressive than any dunk he ever saw. So when Jordan, across multiple documented interviews, names players who pushed him further than anyone else could, the word fear isn't really the right frame. Jordan didn't fear losing. He feared not being enough. And the 5 players on this list, they each, in entirely different ways, made that feeling real. What Jordan did with that feeling is what separates him from everyone who ever played the game. Let's start with the one who ignited something in him that he never quite let go of. Before the 1992 NBA Finals, a reporter asked Michael Jordan what he thought about Clyde Drexler. Jordan smiled. And then, the night before Game 1, sitting at a card table with Magic Johnson, who was covering the finals for NBC, Jordan said something that made absolutely clear this series was never going to be close. Magic Johnson recalled it himself in The Last Dance. "I'm working for NBC. I'm covering the finals. The night before Game 1, we're at Michael's house playing cards, and he said, 'You know what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm going to give it to this dude.'" Jordan delivered. 6 3-pointers in the first half of Game 1 alone. The shrug, the dominant series, the title. But here's what people miss when they tell that story as if it was pure confidence. Jordan himself explained it. In The Last Dance, he said it plainly. "Clyde was a threat. I'm not saying he wasn't a threat, but me being compared to him, I took offense to that. Based on the way I was playing at that time, it wasn't even close. So I attacked him every night." He took offense. That specific word choice tells you everything. Offense is not the emotion of a man who's comfortable. Offense is the emotion of a man who is protecting something. Jordan's identity at that time was singular greatness, and the comparison to Drexler, a genuine, legitimate threat, a player Jordan's own teammate Craig Hodges later revealed. Jordan privately admitted was just as good as him. That comparison was an existential threat. Jordan has also said, "I wanted the people to know the difference between me and Clyde. It was always a comparison, and I didn't want it to be a comparison. I wanted to be totally different." Totally different, not better. Totally different. That's not arrogance. That's the language of a man for whom sameness was the one thing he could not psychologically afford. Some rivalries are about competition, The rivalry between Michael Jordan and Isiah Thomas was about something closer to survival. 3 years, 3 straight playoff eliminations, at the hands of the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons built something called the Jordan Rules, a specific defensive scheme designed to make one player miserable, force him left, trap him in the post, and when he gets to the paint, knock him to the ground. It worked. Now, what Jordan has said publicly about Isiah Thomas is some of the most documented bad blood in NBA history. He called him an asshole on national television in The Last Dance. He said he would have refused to play on the Dream Team if Thomas was included. Scottie Pippen confirmed both of them would have walked. But here's the thing about Jordan and Thomas that gets buried under all of that noise. Jordan respects Isiah Thomas more than almost any player he ever faced. In The Last Dance, Jordan said it directly. "I respect Isiah Thomas's talent. To me, the best point guard of all time is Magic Johnson, and right behind him is Isiah Thomas. No matter how much I hate him, I respect his game. No matter how much I hate him, I respect his game." That sentence is one of the most revealing things Michael Jordan has ever said about another player. Because Jordan didn't give respect easily. He didn't separate the personal from the professional for anyone. Except here. With Isiah Thomas. The Pistons eliminated Jordan 3 straight years. They made a scheme specifically to humiliate him. And they had the most physically confrontational point guard Jordan ever had to navigate. Isiah Thomas would take an elbow and smile. He would go left when the entire defense expected right. He won 2 championships against opponents who had every scouting report, and he still found a way. Jordan, who spent those 3 years preparing, obsessing, attacking, couldn't get past him. And what did Jordan do with that? He rewrote his entire game around beating the Pistons. He brought in Scottie Pippen as his running partner. He stopped trying to score 40 every night and started trusting the offense Phil Jackson was building. The Bulls finally swept Detroit in 1991. And Jordan walked off the court having learned the most important basketball lesson of his life, from a man he still, to this day, will not shake hands with. Here's where the story gets genuinely complicated, because the relationship between Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson is not the story most people tell. The easy version is they were rivals who became friends, and that's true. But the full version is that before the friendship, before the Dream Team, before the 1991 finals, before they became the elder statesmen of the game together, Jordan didn't trust Magic Johnson. In 1985, as a rookie, Jordan went to his first All-Star game. What he didn't know at the time was that veterans, reportedly including Magic Johnson, had quietly agreed to freeze him out. Not to pass him the ball, to put him in his place. Jordan said later he didn't realize it was happening. He was too immature, he said. But once he understood it, he never forgot. Jordan has said he understood the freeze-out as something closer to jealousy. His words, not someone else's. I understood it could be jealousy, and a lot of it came from Magic Johnson should have been Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan. He had the smile, he had everything, he had the marketability. Think about what Jordan is really saying there. He's saying Magic Johnson saw in Jordan everything Magic had already built, the charisma, the marketability, the dominance, and saw it arriving in a younger, louder, more explosive package. And that Magic, even at the peak of his own greatness, felt something about that. The 1991 NBA Finals was Jordan's first title. He beat Magic Johnson to get it. A passing of the torch, everyone said. Magic said afterward that he never had a chance to hate Jordan the way he hated Larry Bird. They only played in the finals once. And by 1992, on the Dream Team, the relationship transformed. Magic said the Dream Team practices were where their friendship truly began. Two of the most brilliant basketball minds alive, finally on the same side, finally without a playoff series between them. Jordan has said he and Magic are good friends now. He's said it directly in interviews, without hesitation. But the road to that friendship ran through a decade of suspicion, a freeze-out he never forgave, a rivalry defined by one man measuring himself against the other. And Jordan had to beat the man he was measuring himself against before he could become his friend. We're about to get to the final two names. Before we do, here's what every player on this list has in common. Not a single one of them simply challenged Jordan as a basketball player. Each one of them touched something deeper: identity, legacy, trust, survival. Jordan has said, in his own voice, on record, that he needed something to drive him. That competition wasn't just a feature of his personality, it was the architecture. The next two names? They're the ones who stress-tested that architecture in ways nobody else could reach. April 20th, 1986. Michael Jordan was 23 years old. He had played just 18 regular season games that year because of a broken bone in his foot. He walked into Boston Garden, the home of a 67-win Celtics team that would go on to win the NBA championship. And he scored 63 points, 63 points, an NBA playoff record that has never been broken. 22 of 41 from the field, 19 of 21 from the line, 53 minutes, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. The Bulls still lost, 135-131 in double overtime. And afterward, Larry Bird said something that Michael Jordan has called, in his own words, the biggest compliment he has ever received in his life. Bird said, "I didn't think anyone was capable of doing what Michael has done to us. He is the most exciting, awesome player in the game today. I think it's just God disguised as Michael Jordan." Jordan has talked about that moment more than once. On the Being Michael Jordan podcast, he said, "When Bird gave me that comment, that was the biggest comment I've ever received in my life. Here was a guy who had been in the league 7 years and was in a class I was trying to enter. A class he was trying to enter. And here is the thing that makes the 1986 moment so revealing. Jordan scored 63 points. He played the greatest individual game in playoff history, and the Celtics swept the series. Bird, who scored 36 that night himself, with 12 rebounds and 8 assists, was still in control. Even after God showed up, Larry Bird found a way to win. Jordan has publicly framed Bird's compliment as a blessing, a recognition he had been waiting for from someone in a class he was chasing. But read between those lines, a 23-year-old drops 63 points, breaks a record that had stood for 24 years, and a 7-year veteran still looks at him from the winning locker room. That's not a rival who was broken. That's a man who was unmoved. Jordan would eventually surpass Bird in every measurable way. More championships, more scoring titles, longer reign. But there's a reason Jordan still talks about that compliment 40 years later. Because Larry Bird, slow, earthbound, undeniable Larry Bird, gave Jordan something no raw stat line could. The recognition that he was approaching a level even legends didn't see coming. And he gave it to him, while beating him. The final name on this list requires some honesty up front. Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant never met in the NBA Finals. They never had a 7-game series that settled anything. By the time Kobe was fully himself, Jordan was in the last chapter. So this isn't a story about dominance or defeat. This is a story about something rarer, and in some ways, more unsettling. Kobe Bryant arrived in the NBA in 1996. He was 17 years old, and from the very first time he shared a court with Michael Jordan, he made his intentions absolutely clear. On the Holding the Court podcast, Kobe described it. "I was thinking in my mind, I didn't care. I'm going to destroy this guy. I don't care if I'm 18. I'm coming for blood." He was 18 years old, coming for blood, against the greatest player alive. Jordan saw it immediately. After one of their early matchups, he told reporters, "I had that same type of vibrancy when I was young. It's exciting to match wits against physical skills. If I have to guard a Kobe Bryant, I can still hold my own." Ron Harper, Jordan's teammate, was more direct. "Michael loves this stuff. Kobe's a young player who someday may take his throne, but I don't think Michael's ready to give up his throne yet." Here's what made Kobe Bryant different from every other player who ever tried to challenge Michael Jordan. He didn't just want to beat him, he wanted to become him. Kobe's former teammate, Nick Van Exel, revealed that Kobe had once borrowed his highlight tapes of Michael Jordan. He never returned them. He studied the footwork from the right block, the pump fake into the jumper, the way Jordan turned his shoulder before going baseline. Kobe described his approach himself. "The best way I could figure out how to defend him was to see how he would defend himself if I held a mirror up." A mirror. That word is everything, because a mirror doesn't challenge you from across the room. A mirror shows you what you are. Kobe Bryant looked at Michael Jordan and said, "I'll take all of this. The footwork, the mentality, the obsession, the cost of it, all of it." Not inspired by Jordan, not influenced by Jordan, systematically studying and absorbing him. Jordan and Kobe would eventually become what Jordan described as a big brother and little brother relationship. Jordan said at the Kobe Bryant Memorial in 2020, "Maybe it surprises people that Kobe and I were very close friends, but we were very close friends. Kobe was my dear friend. He was like a little brother." He described how Kobe would call him in the middle of the night to talk basketball, to talk business, to talk life. He wanted to be the best basketball player he could be. As I got to know him, I wanted to be the best big brother I could be. And then, on February 24th, 2020, at the Staples Center, in front of thousands of people and a watching world, Michael Jordan stood at a podium and wept. Not the composed, measured Jordan who spent 40 years rarely letting anything crack the surface. Wept. He said, "When Kobe Bryant died, a piece of me died. As I look in this arena and across the globe, a piece of you died." He joked, through tears, about the crying meme he'd created at his Hall of Fame speech. He said, "I told my wife I wasn't going to do this, because I didn't want to see that for the next 3 or 4 years. That is what Kobe Bryant does to me. That is what Kobe Bryant does to me. Present tense, not did, does. Even in that moment, even gone. The little brother who borrowed the tapes and never gave them back, who studied the moves until he could feel them in the dark, who came for blood at 18 and eventually earned the right to call the greatest player alive his big brother. That relationship, competitive, complicated, deeply human, is unlike anything else in the history of basketball. And it started with a young player holding up a mirror to a legend who recognized exactly what he was seeing. Here's what these 5 players, taken together, actually tell us, not about basketball, about the architecture of greatness. Clyde Drexler showed Jordan what comparison feels like, and Jordan turned it into 6 three-pointers and a shrug. Isiah Thomas showed Jordan what it costs to be outmaneuvered, and Jordan rebuilt his entire game around what he learned losing to him. Magic Johnson showed Jordan what professional jealousy looks like from the inside of it, and Jordan eventually made him one of his closest peers. Larry Bird showed Jordan that the greatest compliment can come from the person who just beat you, and Jordan called it the biggest moment of recognition in his life. And Kobe Bryant showed Jordan that legacies don't end. They continue, in someone else's hands, on someone else's court. Jordan has said, in his own voice, on record, that he needed something to drive him. He needed the comparison to Drexler. He needed the Jordan rules. He needed the freeze-out and the compliment, and the little brother who wouldn't stop calling in the middle of the night. Invincibility wasn't something Michael Jordan felt. It was something Michael Jordan performed every morning, every game, every season, while the 5 players on this list kept him honest enough to be worth the performance. That is what the greatest career in basketball history actually looked like from the inside. Not a man without doubt, a man who used every doubt, every comparison, every loss, every sleepless night, every little brother with a borrowed tape, and turned all of it into something that has never been matched. Drop in the comments. Which of these 5 rivalries surprised you most? And if you want to go deeper, we've got a full breakdown of what Kobe Bryant said about Jordan's influence on his game. The details of that story will change how you think about both of them. That video is up next.